multitude of many people, which make a noise like the noise of the sea, and the rushing of nations, that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, like a wheel before the whirlwind. And behold, eventide, trouble, and before the morning he is not.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. We're continuing today in Genesis 24. We're kind of finishing up this chapter, so we're not going to read the whole chapter because we read, and in fact, it is twice recounted by Abraham's servant, his journey and his charge and his success. So we're going to begin reading at 51. And we're going to read into the next chapter, which we will be discussing today. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. This, by the way, well, I should say, let's start with verse 50. I was thinking of the verse, so I'm going to start commentary, because we did comment on verse 50, but we're going to read from 50. One moment, please, here. All right. Then Laban and Bethuel answered and said, The thing proceedeth from the Lord. We cannot speak thee bad or good. Behold, Rebekah is before thee. Take her and go, and let her be thy master's son's wife, as the Lord hath spoken. And it came to pass that when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped the Lord, bowing himself to the earth. And the servant brought forth jewels of silver, and jewels of gold and raiment, and gave them to Rebekah. She gave also to her brother and to her mother precious things. I just want to see if I got something. I have a cut there, and I thought there was something in it. Just paint. I thought there was like a dust or something. And it came to pass, and when Abraham's servant heard their words, he worshipped the Lord by himself. Okay. Precious things. Okay, verse 54. And they did eat and drink, he and the men that were with him, and tarried all night. And they rose up in the morning, and he said, Send me away unto my master. And her brother and her mother said, Oh, it's okay. Let the damsel abide with us a few days, at the least 10. After that she shall go. Now, this can get, oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to comment yet. And he said unto them, Hinder me not, seeing the Lord hath prospered my way. Send me away that I may go to my master. And they said, We will call the damsel, and inquire at her mouth. And they called Rebekah, and said unto her, Wilt thou go with this man? And she said, I will go. And they sent away Rebekah their sister, and her nurse, and Abraham's servant, and his men. And they blessed Rebekah, and said unto her, Thou art our sister, be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gates of those that hate them. I'm going to try that verse again, because I just butchered it twice. Thou art our sister, be thou the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. And Rebekah arose, and her damsels, and they rode upon the camels, and followed the man. And the servant took Rebekah and went his way. And Isaac came from the way of the well of Lahairoi, for he dwelt in the south country. And Isaac went out to meditate in the field at eventide, and he lifted up his eyes and saw, and behold, the camels were coming. And Rebekah lifted up her eyes, and when she saw Isaac, she lighted off the camel. For she said unto the servant, What man is this that walketh in the field to meet us? And the servant had said, It is my master. Therefore she took a veil and covered herself. And the servant told Isaac all things that he had done. And Isaac brought her unto his mother Sarah's tent, into his mother Sarah's tent, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife. And he loved her, And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Let's have a coffee here. Then again, Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah. And she bare him Zimran, and Jokshan, and Medan, and Midian, and Ishbak, and Shua. And Jokshan begat Sheba, and Dedan. And the sons of Dedan were Asherim, and Letushim, Elamum, Leumim. All the sons of Midian, Ephah, and Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah. And Abraham gave all that he had unto Isaac. But unto the sons of the concubines which Abraham had, Abraham gave gifts, and sent them away from Isaac his son, while he yet lived, eastward, into the east country, or unto the east country. And these are the days of the years of Abraham's life, which he lived 160 years. Then Abraham gave up the ghost, and died in a good old age, an old man, and full of years, and was gathered unto his people. And his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron the son of Zohar the Hittite, which is before Mamre, the field which Abraham purchased of his sons of Heth. There was Abraham buried, and Sarah his wife. And it came to pass after the death of Abraham, that God blessed his son Isaac, and Isaac dwelt by the well Laharoi. Pardon me. I do have a mute button. Hold on, I got a cough again. Technology, isn't it wonderful? Okay. Somehow I got rolled back. Okay. It's because I know it rolls back to where the cursor is if I go away. So he dwelt by the well. Okay. Verse 12. Now these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's handmaid, bare unto Abraham. And these are the names of the sons of Ishmael, by their names, according to their generations. The firstborn of Ishmael, Nebajoth, and Kedar, and Adbeel, and Mibsam, and Mishma, and Duma, and Massa, Hadar, and Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema. These are the sons of Ishmael. These are their names, and these are their names by their towns and by their castles, 12 princes according to their nations. And these are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. And he gave up the ghost and died, and was gathered unto his people. And they dwelt from Havilah unto Shur, that is before Egypt, as thou goest toward Assyria. And he died in the presence of all his brethren. And these are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham begat Isaac, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, the Syrian of Padan Aram, the sister to Laban the Syrian. And Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah his wife conceived. And the children struggled together within her. It's been an issue since before Christmas. I guess that's the long version, like I said. And I get it long. You know, bioweapons, you know, affects some people differently. Lovely. All right. But God will heal that which man seeks to destroy. Okay. She conceived. Okay. Let's just start at verse 22 again. And the children struggled together within her. And she said, If it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. And when her days to be delivered were fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red, all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare them. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau, because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. And I would say probably because of the word of the Lord. And Jacob sawed pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. And Esau said unto Jacob, Feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, Sell me this day thy birthright. And Esau said, Behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? And Jacob said, Swear to me this day. And he sware unto him. And he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. And then comes that famine. Because, like I said, this is actually a tumultuous time historically, as far as when this is set in the historical period that it is set in, according to the generations of the Exodus, as when this is supposed to be happening, in which I presume to be, I don't see how, things, Abraham takes place in a clear historic epoch. The pre-flood things is stuff that, we have to understand it is somewhat intentionally veiled in the midst of time. It talks about being willingly ignorant of that time. But when we think about how little is written and how much would have to have been for the end of a world, which is something. But anyways, but certainly this, and here we get into this, we get deep into the, Isaac, his wife, he finds his wife, whom he loves, right? Rebecca's before they, so let's go back to that part. Okay, they take Rebecca. He worshipped the Lord, bowing himself to the earth. Again, I always think it's funny when people say, why does God demand worship? He only demands worship in the sense that, like, a good performance demands applause. You know what I mean? It's just what you do, man. It's just part of nature. It's built into nature, into our nature. I can't see how it would be any other way. It's it's funny to me because it's a question I hear people ask, and it's like, show me an example. They say, the first commandment. Sure. No, it doesn't. God doesn't demand worship. It says, him only shalt thou worship. Truly. Because man worships God, but God doesn't say, you got to worship me. I need it. I need it. I need to be affirmed. That's how they act that it's about. He needs to be affirmed. We need to act appropriately. If we're going to be entrusted with the inheritance which we are promised. I don't want to be too high-minded as I talk about the inheritance. We have to, are you not willing to bring yourself into line? There's conditions. There's conditions. Of course there's conditions. The main one is faith. Faith. That's the condition. Really the only one you have to worry about, right? Because if you're true to that one, everything else comes into line. And that's the truth, is that that, that's why faith is all you really need. But as James points out, the idea of faith alone is a ridiculous oxymoronic statement. Show me your faith without your works. I'll show you my faith by my works. Because if you have no works and you've had your faith, like I said, you what are you, crucified or something? You have no works, but you have faith. Okay, you must be hanging from a cross somewhere. Meaning you have no further. Your faith isn't allowed to proceed because you're about to die. And in some case, and God grant you mercy on your way. And I want mercy too. I bless those that curse me, even so. God forgive them. But sometimes I know He will not. Okay, so anyways, they come. He gives them gifts. They kind of said, "Hey, let the damsel abide at least 10 days." This can go on and on. Like, oh, just another 10 days. Oh, just a little while longer. So, and the servant knows, like, no. I should not delay at all. I think Abraham made it quite clear that he should get going and get this done. I thought that was implicit in the way he was charged, very solemnly with this task. Isaac needs a wife. His promise must be fulfilled. But the Lord will guide the way, and the servant's journey is prospered, right? And so he asks if they can go right away, and they said, well, let's ask the damsels. Rebecca is not being just, trucked off here. Though it is, like a lot of things in life, people talk about, like, it's funny because I've been trained in child protection type, or, like as far as spotting grooming activities and things like that, right? And one of the things that they point out is that wherever an imbalance of power exists, there's a potential for abuse. So a coach and the person being coached, there's a power imbalance there. The person being coached, because they're under the authority of the other person, can't meaningfully say yes or no in a person-to-person type romantic relationship, because there's a power imbalance, right? Well, in life there are always things that come, and the questions can come at us powerfully. Meaning like, you get the opportunity of a lifetime, right? Do you take it, or do you continue the way you like for her, like, let's say they come and she is not saying no to this in any way. It is not implied that she couldn't say no, because even in the law and the stuff, if a girl could say no. If the girl will not have him, because girls always are able to say no, but obviously, all this wealth is present, all this, right? I remember when I remember talking to I remember learning about this and thinking about it. But I remember, like, when I met my wife, I was teaching the Bible. I was in a position, I was the teacher. Now, she wasn't I wasn't giving her grades or anything like that. It was more of a Bible study. So I don't know if it was that. But yeah. But you know what? Being in a position of power gave me more power. But life is like that. And the thing is, we have to recognize when it's a blessing versus something that's a temptation to evil. The Lord doesn't send temptations to evil, but things of God don't always come wrapped up in gold and silver leaf, and jewels and all stuff like that. So it's good to be careful. That's always strikes me about this, is like, they just, a bunch of guys show up and they send her off. They send her off with them. Okay. Seems a little bit it's weird, because even though it's a more brutal time, it's also in some ways quaintly trusting. isn't it? They just show up, but again, they are bringing these gifts. And, people who were like slave traders wouldn't be paying all this gold and silver and stuff and really showing off and the story. And there's doubtless things like tokens. I mean, perhaps Abraham has a seal. I don't know. It doesn't say. All right. But the way it went, also the story, the men believed the story. Not just because they were superstitious, but because it is remarkable. And also, they were kin. They knew who he was talking about. That's another thing. It's like, for a stranger to have so much information about kin, it would not be normal. Again, but in this day and age, it's kind of funny because, again, with the proliferation of, invasive technologies and people's privacy being invaded, people can know stuff about you. You know what I mean? Like that maybe they shouldn't. So again, because when I read this, it's like, I can't help but thinking like, yeah, I'd want to go along. I'd go along. I had a company, but they did send her nurse, which I like. That was, and again, notice she has some woman who's been a servant, who's been her nurse her whole life and is continuing to go with her. This is some older woman. And it's like, and you understand, it's like a lot like networks of relationships. And a lot of times based on things like competence. Abraham was a very competent man. He prospers. God prospers him. He walks with God, stands before God. You know what I mean? He knew, like, I've been meditating on that so much. It's like, and I think I understand, but it is a high bar. It's like to never step from his presence, like in your mind. Think about it, like always standing before God, like under his eye, as we are. But to know that, like to know it in a way, in your very bones, and so that it informs. And I also think so that it informs your every doing. And as soon as we do something that is not informed by that, I couldn't say I'm standing before God. I'm somewhere else. So if we want to stand before God, we have to rest in the blood of Christ, to cover our sins. But we also have to then, be faithful. Not that, like I said, forgiveness, we're forgiven. But let us not tempt God, as they also tempted and were destroyed of serpents, as it says, right? Yeah. So Isaac dwells by that, he came from the way of the well, Laharoi. That was that well that, wasn't it not the well of God hears? Let me just check that. Wasn't that like he hears me or something like? No, that was, well, let me see here. Wait, we went past. Did I go that? I did go too far. Hold on. I didn't finish. Well, that's weird. I have the wrong version of the Bible. I'm like, why am I not? Why does this look so different? Okay. Oh, we gotta go way down the chapter. There we go. The well beer. Yeah, the living one that sees me. That was the one with. I had it right. I just didn't have the fullness of it. That was when Hagar was despairing, and then the Lord revealed that He had seen her, and she would take care of her and her son. Okay, let's go back. Okay, but as Rebecca is going willingly, and I always see that as like she's taking possession, just like Abraham hears God's call. She too, no doubt, hearing this story, believes it. She was part of it. The tokens and gifts, again, are persuasive. these would be extremely valuable in their time, I have no doubt. And so, as she departs, you are a sister. Be the mother of thousands of millions, and let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. It's an interesting, the first things are clear enough, but then let thy seed possess the gate of those which hate them. A concept that is not hard to understand, but it's quite deep if you think about it. Possessing the gate of those which hate them. The gate of the city is where people go in and out. It's the lifeline of the commerce of the city. If they can't go in and out, it's like being shut up and besieged. It's a lot like lockdown. And what it means is those that have the power, it's to have the power, those that would sort of possess your gate, that hate you, that you would have them own their gate, so to speak. I mean, you would have power of whether or not they could go in or come out. It means it means absolute, control. And those that hate them, what else would you, those that hate you, what can you do but control what they do? If they be so consumed with hate, it's not just a question of like, oh, I don't like those people. It's a question of like, hatred is an implication of they would do you harm. Another way it's put in other places, because this phrase comes up. This is the first time this concept is mentioned, and it comes up, throughout the scriptures a few more times. They will possess the gates of their enemies. In fact, that's the way I usually think of it. Maybe that's, I'm not going to look that up right now. It's all right. And Rebekah rose and her damsels, they rode upon the camels and followed the men. So she has damsels also with her, like maids. Because again, she's not a woman of no means herself. But still, again, you can see they are wealthy, and so also is Abraham, but he so much more so. He's, like I said, he's like a petty, which by that I mean a small, almost like monarch, like he's got all these men servants, maid servants, oxes and camels and all that stuff, and Isaac inherits all that stuff. So Isaac went out to meditate in the field at eventide. And so then he sees the camels and Rebekah, and she sees him, and it's a very touching sort of sentimental moment where they come together. It is a little, their meeting is kind of interesting because it is sort of like, it says he loved her. I think that's the first time it ever mentions a man loving his wife. I don't remember if it said that. I don't doubt that Abraham loves Sarah. I forgot. It might have said that prior to that, right? I'm going to look up. I'm just going to look up the word loved. Maybe I should just look love. Because L-O-V-E. That'll cover loved too. 250. But I only care about the ones in Genesis. So that's... I just want to see how many there are in Genesis. Clear. Genesis. Only 14. Yeah, it says, take thou thy son Isaac, whom thou lovest. That was, and offer him up for a burnt offering. Okay. No, then it goes Rebekah. That's the first mention of a husband loving his wife. The first mention of love is for Abraham to Isaac. And then this is the next. Isaac loves Rebekah. So he's comfort after his mother's death. I gotta admit, to me it's like, well, my mother didn't die, but she went away. But I was never really understood because I never had a close relationship with my mother. The idea of like, I guess I do understand because like I have a close relationship with my wife, and I like having a woman in my life. I do. You know, but it's like, but that's why I got married young because I needed a woman in my life. You know, and Isaac also. You know, his mother. A lot of people, your mother. You know, I remember I would always go down the card aisle at Mother's Day. Not on Mother's Day, like some sap, but I'd see like when I was younger. I'd like, all right, I'll give my mom a card for Mother's Day. I'd look at all the cards. I'm like, well, these don't work. There's all you're always there for me. You always understand. I was like, and I would laugh, and I just didn't understand. Sorry, I should have covered that up. But I could see, I knew other guys who would say that about their mom, how they were like, oh, you're my confidant, you know, and all those things and whatever. You know, Abraham also was obviously missed Sarah because he took another wife, right? And interesting here, the word again, you know, again, Abraham took a wife. Now, you know, just so you know, like when we read Genesis, the earlier part, in chapter 3, or 4, she again bare his brother Abel. You know, people will say, oh, that means they're twins. Again, just because it says, this word again, yes, does mean to continue, and I think it's the same thing in Hebrew. I'm going to check. Hopefully I got that right. Just because the phrasing sounds almost identical, doesn't it? And again, bear his brother, you know. Yasaf, I think that is, right? To add. I just want to double check that. Wouldn't want to pass out wrong information and get my lovely detractors ammunition. Fortunately, they don't have the patience to wade through all my tedious studies. So, again. Yeah, right. Yeah, same word. It is the same word as in Genesis 4, verse 2. She again bare his brother Abel. And people will say, oh, that means they're twins because she immediately continued to do it. It doesn't mean that explicitly. You could read it like that. Yes, it can be read like that. I don't deny that. But the idea that it has to be read that way is false. That's the fault. You do not, because that would mean, oh, actually, Abraham took Keturah at the same, this is actually going back in time before Sarah was dead. No. This is after. She bare him Zimram, Jokshan, Midian. A lot of these, like it says, these are the children of Keturah. Abraham had a great number of children by Keturah. And the sons of the concubines which he had, he gave gifts and sent them away from Isaac while he had lived eastward into the east country. And that, you know, that is the direction from which I thought, like, some of these, like Asherim, Assyria, I believe, right? Sheba, Dedan. And some of these, especially Medan and Midian, they come into play later. But they are, I forgot if Medan is related to the Medes. Because that would make sense going to the East Country like Persia and all that. But I don't get too caught up on, you know, ethnic, that ethnic aspect of it. Because like I said, the main thing is that Abraham is a father of many nations. That's what his name literally means, or what it was changed to. All right, so Abraham, the days of his life, which he lived 103 square and 15 years. That was 175, right? And then Abraham gave up the ghost and died in a good old age. an old man full of years, and was gathered to his people. That's a phrase they use often when people die. They say they were gathered. He was gathered to his people. That was what they would. That's a common phrase. What does that mean? Is that, like we have euphemisms around death or things we say, like what do we say? We say things differently because we have a different idea of what death is, right? Or at least a lot of times we'll say, well, they've gone home, right? That's another one. They've gone home. They've gone to their long home. And that's kind of that actually is more like, we don't say that anymore, actually. We usually say they're gone, like, they've gone to heaven and stuff like that. Because that's the way, like I said, that's when I started reading the Bible as the actual Bible, not my children's Bible. As a teenager, I started reading the real Bible, and I was like, I didn't understand how this resurrection stuff would work. I always thought, why bother? Don't I go to heaven right after I die, and then God sends me to hell or something, or I'm accepted? Obviously, as a kid, you don't really understand, so it's like it's an open possibility. Maybe I am going to hell, People still think that, I'm sure. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar the Hittite. Again, I forgot about Zohar the Hittite. We've gone through that a little bit. I want to mention it. It's interesting because, about back in the 18th century or the 19th, I'm not sure if it's 18th or 19th, when I think it was in the 19th that they discovered it, but there was a point, during the Enlightenment, when they started looking at the Bible, it was just utter skepticism. One of the things is the Hittites. There was no record of Hittites anywhere. They thought the Bible just made them up. Nobody thinks that anymore because it was confirmed. Because these things, because the Hittites did kind of disappear at the end of the Bronze Age. The Hittite Empire collapsed with a lot of things. Okay, so, but now we know, it's like, so a lot of the archaeological stuff, especially, is, that's not archaeological, like the historical information it comes from that, it's all from that. There's not like, there are sometimes, like I say, anachronisms of name that are, to me, it's like, okay, I understand. It's like it probably wasn't called Hebron before the people called the Hebrews lived there. Obviously. And in several places they have, like Jerusalem, we know it used to be, it was Jebus. Well, that was the name. The Jebusites. Was it Jebus? Yeah, right? Jebusites? The Jebusites in Jebus was the name of the city. Okay, so then he gives the generations of Ishmael. Now we talked about that. He was a good old age. They dwelt. So again, it talks about Ishmael and his people have on the shore that is before Egypt, as thou goest toward the southern desert there. And these are all the generations. And they don't all necessarily stay put either. That's another thing. It's like that's where they dwelt at that time. That's another thing. Abraham begat Isaac. Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife. And the Lord was entreated. Again, and there is not a lot of eventfulness except for, the promise was fulfilled. The wife was given. There's not like all kinds of stuff going on. When Rebecca is barren, well, she's not extremely old or anything, but she's not conceiving. So Isaac entreats the Lord on her behalf. whenever we can entreat the Lord on behalf for anything. especially the good things of life. Sometimes things are for a reason. Sometimes that reason is to draw us nearer to Him. Like we may have a need to, through so many of my difficulties in life. If I didn't have the difficulties in life, that's really what pushed me towards God. And I don't understand. I have no way of reconciling that with, like I couldn't imagine if everything in my life had been, quote unquote, what would I call it? The peace that the world gives. If I'd had the peace that the world gives, would I have sought the peace that only God can give? Probably not. Why? Because the peace that God gives is the peace that is in the midst of adversity. Why would you seek that peace if you already had the peace that the world gives? The peace that is from, I have billions of dollars and I have FU money and I can do whatever I want and buy and sell people like products. If I have all my needs filled and I'm just filled up with all the earthly carnal desires I could possess. Like if from your youth. This is why there's so much corruption in the people who have those things. It's like, that's why I say it's like when they say, oh, our life is tough, we mock them, right? But they're not lying. You don't understand. Like, it's tough because you become soft. You know what I mean? As I observed my dad getting old, I realized because, he skipped leg day too many years in a row. Right? And his legs are gone now, pretty much. He's still got them, but they don't function very well. And they say use it or lose it. Well, that's part of the thing. It's like we have to account that, in life, if we do not, there's a certain we will get old. We're going to weaken. But it's like there's also things we can do to, like I said, to not sort of throw ourselves off the pinnacle of the temple, to not willingly go along, and knowingly destroy ourselves. When we know, when it comes into our ears, like, oh, that's not good for you. We can't complain about the consequences when we just continue to do those things. Okay, but anyways, but she was barren. And again, God drew them in. God draws us in to the difficulties of life because they have the thing is they have a blessing in that they are so soft that in their in having everything. Because this is common, they say, but they're still not happy, right? That's the cliche. Again, it's not happiness, but you just don't have any trouble about the things that people in the world trouble themselves about. Where's my meal coming from? Where's my clothes coming from? Right? Where's my entertainment coming from? Where's my all they have all that stuff, but they're still not happy. Because again, that having all your basic needs met is not what makes for human fulfillment. That's just something we think, because we will stress about making sure we're taken care of and we have the necessities of life and our children and all that. That's important, right? We stress about that and we work to make sure that doesn't happen. And so people get this idea that, if I had all that, then everything would be great. But you still, like I said, they talk about first world problems, right? But it's not that those aren't problems that are real in the minds of the people who suffer from them. It looks pathetic from people who suffer under much more, let's say, problems. They're more clearly focused as difficult. When you're struggling to make ends meet, when you're struggling, when you don't know if you're going to eat enough the next day, it's like, that's not, I've gone a couple of times like that. I was so broke and that I didn't know. I'm like, I didn't have the gas to go to a food pantry. You know what I mean? It was like, oh. But that passed quickly. So we don't always, things, we have to understand, we don't want to be like, oh, poor me. But also, I don't want to mock people who are better off than I am just because they still struggle. Because, it's like, I think I'm supposed to be better than that. That's why. I just think I'm supposed to be better. It's like even from like the Lord himself, he humbled himself and became a servant. Took upon himself the form of a servant. And that's the form we're called to take on ourselves. So that's what pleases God. So here we have the children struggling in the womb. Jacob and Esau, the classic two brothers, twins. Here are the twins. Here are your twins. Cain and Abel, whatever. They're brothers. Isn't the fact that they were brothers close enough? They have to be twins. Oh, that's right, because of the two fathers. I forgot that was why it got that way. And so, I think in some ways, like the whatever was going on in the room was probably, and remember, she has nurses and maids, other women to give her an opinion. There's some activity in her stomach that is a lot. Like she's noticing it. I mean, kids kicking stuff, but like there was like a wrestling match going on with the infants in there. And whatever, it doesn't have to be literally so, but that's what it felt like. And the kids were, the nurses are looking, wow, they're just kicking, punching, and there's just a lot of activities. And maybe the babies are just reacting to each other because they just are like, they don't like each other or whatever, I don't know. But she went to inquire of the Lord. I want to know, where'd she go? Right? Where'd she go? Where did she go? To the altar that Abraham built, perhaps? Could be, right? That would make sense to me because he built that altar to the Lord, right? So maybe she went there. They have some way. I mean, what I'm saying is like they are already following some form of practice of religion. I mean, because this phrase is very particular. They went to inquire of the Lord. Usually they would go like maybe to the priest and have him check the Urim and Thummim and that stuff. Right? Which is where they would, the priest's breastplate, and he would use this basically like dice. Because as the proverb says, the die is cast into the lap, but the disposing thereof is of the Lord. You can throw dice it's random, sure, if they're not loaded, right? But God, every time you throw it, the Lord already knows what's coming up. That's why I thought when I watched that David Eagleman series on the brain, and he had the big box at the last show, he had this big glass case. It probably wasn't glass; it was probably acrylic or something, and inside were all these mouse traps with ping pong balls, and then they drop a ping pong ball. And you're saying how every time you do it, the results are different, and you can't predict it. Well, he says you can't predict it, but I don't know if you know down to the vibration of a molecule or whatever, or the in and out of reality of whatever. I don't know the nature of molecules any more than the scientists really do. Meaning the actual nature of the most. Like they seek for that God particle, the most fundamental thing that everything else is made out of. We're trying to figure out what is that. If there is just one thing, that everything else is made out of or whatever. I'm not even sure if that's what that means. That's how much I don't know about it, all right? But here's the thing, but God knows about everything. And so there is not a factor in that equation of no matter how many mouse traps, no matter how many ping pong balls, that God cannot calculate and know exactly how the ping pong balls are going to bounce. That is the nature of God. Now, we are nowhere near that. We can't. That's why I tell people, that's why, anyone who knows who studied with me for a long time, I used to be extremely hostile to the idea of free will. And I haven't exactly embraced it, but I have incorporated it into my understanding of predestination and election. And of course, because predestination and election is something that proceeds forth from God and is his perspective on the world. Whereas our perspective is one of an untethered free will. That's how we see it. That was what the analogy of the mousetrap was supposed to show, that like it's all unpredictable. Well, from our perspective, and that's what I thought one of the flaws of science itself is. One of the flaws of science itself is the assumption that all observers share the same objective universe. And I don't think that's true. Because, well, I think they're even proving it to themselves. Because they're saying the things that our senses show us are a kind of delusion. Or, I don't know if that's exactly right. I don't think so. I don't agree with that entirely. Because I think that yes, well, you don't see things. The things that are not made of things which appear. Yeah, I mean, like the nature of things. But that is so like singular in the viewpoint. It's like, oh, we can only think about things at the tiniest level. But what about the grandest level, the macro level? The level of God. So, we don't know what's coming. But God could know. As it's written, Jacob have I loved, Esau have I hated. The children being yet in the womb, neither having done any good or evil. As the Apostle Paul said, they hadn't done anything, and God already hated Esau. So why? And people say, oh, because he knew what he would do. I don't like to say that, because that implies God reacts. I'd say more like God knew what he had made. As far as like knew what man, yes, he knew what manner of man Esau was. Of course, this is what he's going to be like. But like I said, it's not a random dice story. It's like, wow, look what came out, an Esau. I'm as surprised as the rest of you. Before they were conceived. Why do you think they had trouble conceiving? It was sort of like we can understand that this conception is of God. This is God's doing. There are two nations. Because she was barren, and then these are fraternal twins. So 2 eggs. The Lord brought forth 2 eggs. The one shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. So this is what Rebekah receives of the Lord when she goes to inquire of this thing. Information that he gives her. This will prejudice her in the future. That's why I said, when she loves Jacob, Isaac loves Esau because of the pottage, and Rebekah loves Jacob because of the word of the Lord. That's what I say. I add that, but I do think that that's why, because she heard these things, and also that he is a different kind of man. Like I said, Esau came out red all over like a hairy garment. I mean, he had red hair. And they call his name Esau. I remember someone showing me like whatever, never mind. But you could, I forgot, David Wood had a video about how in some of the Islamic writings, Muhammad is described as being extremely white, like white. His skin is white. And it's like Esau, he's red all over like a hairy. He's covered in red hair. I mean, that's what it sounds to me, right? And they called his name Esau. At least if I'm not reading that wrong, right? And Esau meaning something like red, I think, right? Or, let me see. 25. No, because, okay. Esau. Okay. Huh. Funny. I like the way they don't tell you right there. I think because it comes from the word red or something like that. Like here it's defined as the oldest son of Isaac. It doesn't give a definition. Now, Strong's will have a definition. Yeah, he says, apparently, a form of the passive participle of asa in the original sense of handling, rough, i.e. sensibly felt, Esau, I guess, son of Isaac, including his posterity. What's the asa mean? To do or make. Interesting. Well, here's the thing. If it means like rough or something like that, or implies, so, you know, it has something to do with his appearance, obviously. This hairy appearance caused him to get the name. That's all you really need to know. The red appearance. I think Edom, the nation Edom, when we get to that, right here, Edom, I believe that does mean red. You know what's funny? It says right here, the name of a condiment. Am I just out of my mind? And it does say it. Idome? A condiment? Like ketchup? The name of a condiment. Okay. A condiment. Now, or whatever. That just seems weird. Does the brown driver... Okay. Condiment. Okay, then a proper name. I don't think it means condiment in this kind. When is it used that way? Okay. Ah, there I see. Okay. I see. Edom. Wow, it does mean condiment. That's interesting. Because look at here in Genesis 25:1 where we're at. It's because in New American Standard they say that red stuff there. His name was called Stuff because he wanted some of the red stuff. Wow. See what I'm talking about there? Like, here's where they translate in the New American Standard. Of that red stuff, therefore I am famished. Therefore his name was called Edom. Was his name called Stuff? That's very interesting. They have a very different take on that. And let's see. Please let me have a swallow of that red stuff there. That's Edom. Okay, I get it. For I am famished. Therefore his name is called Edom. That red condiment. Adom. The word red there is Adom, which means red. And stuff is Edom, the name of a condiment. That red Edom there. For I am famished. Okay, so his name was called Edom because he wanted... It's like getting your name called ketchup, basically. But it is literally almost like his name was ketchup because he wanted the ketchup. And he sold his birthright for ketchup. If you eat ketchup as soup, which obviously most people don't, that'd be kind of gross, right? So we're going to pick up with Jacob and Esau tomorrow. I see we're out of time, or on Monday. And that's probably good because there's a lot to say about them. So we talked about Esau and his name. We won't dwell on that. We'll probably start reading at a little bit back here at their birth. Yeah, we'll read back here, but we're going to start our breakdown from verse 26 because that's where we really are. Okay, we'll pick up at verse 26 on Monday. Thanks for joining me. Looking forward to being back again. Until then.
Woe to the multitude of many people which make a noise like the noise of the sea and the rushing of nations that make a rushing like the rushing of mighty waters. The nations shall rush like the rushing of many waters, but God shall rebuke them, and they shall flee far off, and shall be chased as the chaff of the mountains before the wind, like a wheel before the whirlwind.